funk. Thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, I lay in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and reconnect to myself and know that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress to make me looking like when blessings drop in. And so I cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah, let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
All of you for joining us tonight. It was a great show, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining. No. Good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. It's Sunday, July the 6th. I don't even know what date it is, to be honest with you. I don't even really care at this point. I do know it's summer, so I guess that's good enough. And we are podcasting and doing our thing from Bridgeton, New Jersey via Arlington, Virginia. Tonight, my co-host and I will be talking about you know who and you know what, and maybe some other things. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, this is the Divided We Stand channel on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. We are not a monetized channel, which means you won't be seeing any advertisements. We're not looking for money from you. We're just looking for you to commiserate with us. An exchange of ideas. If you're on Facebook, you can find us on the Divided We Stand Facebook group page. We've been around for 5 years. We only intended on being on Facebook for about a year or so, but look what happened. So if you're not a member, please join us. We hit 1,500 this week, and maybe we'll hit 15001. Who knows? One at a time. In any case, I'd like to introduce my good friend and co-host, and that's Dave Price from Arlington, Virginia. Well, I already can tell when the hands start flying, something's up.
Well, the thing is that I think we should be transparent and truthful with our audience. So I want to use this moment to start this way. Yes, it is true. Yes, it is true, ladies. Yes, it's true, ladies and gentlemen, that we're supposed to go on at 8. Now, we didn't go on at 8, as you can see. No. Oh, so that's like generally a TV show comes on at 7 o'clock? No, when you say you're going to be on, you're supposed to be on. Now, there are extenuating circumstances. And I don't think these extenuating circumstances exist in this case, but I'll tell you what happened. So anyway, we are late because Brian Weinstein, who is 65 years old, had to clean his room. Now, I remember, that, you know what that's cheers for? That's cheers because you weren't on. Now, what happens is this. Okay, when I was 8, maybe 10 even.
Riding your bike?
Right? But what happened was this. I'd want to go out and play, and my mom would say, not until you clean your room.
Right.
But you are 65. You are not 8 or 10.
Like I'm 65 and still haven't cleaned my room.
Well, here we go. A, why hadn't you cleaned your room? B, why did you choose to do it then?
All right,
C,
I will tell you. Look, I can go right to A, why I didn't clean my room. First of all, it's not necessarily cleaning the room. It was trying to move something out of the room and something else into the room. And it had a lot of...
Would you care to describe what those two... describe what those two objects were?
I have a plastic container of real books. You know what they are, of course. Musicians all know that. And then the second container I have is all old 8mm films, which I transferred to digital about 2 years ago. So I wanted to move that out, and I wanted to bring something from the bedroom in here. And that.
What did you want to bring in from the bedroom in here?
Well, it was this thing that was kind of cumbersome. It has wheels on it. It's kind of like a nightstand, but it has wheels, and you can put things.
Well,
in
why
it.
did you want it in the room? Why didn't you leave it in the room where it was?
It was basically not the right place for it, and it just was a piece of crap. Things would fall off on it, so I'd rather have it fall off here than there. And the other one I just.
So in other words, what you're telling me, what I hear you saying so far, is tapes that you were already done with, real books, which indicates to me, they call them real books, but actually, ladies and gentlemen, they're fake books.
Fake books.
So we've got, they are fake books. I've used them. No, I haven't. I know I am. Now, to get a table moved in that really isn't any good because things fall off of it, but instead of disposing of the table, you're going to keep the table. So now the focus shifts from your lack of time management skills to actually, why would you keep a table that doesn't really work?
It's called inertia. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, no, this is important. You're asking millions, or at least 6 people, to believe in what you say, and yet you show just no concern for them by just willy-nilly. Listen, what you did, Brian.
Schedule here, fella.
Summer schedule? Yeah, right. Okay. What you actually did is say, and I quote, "I don't care about the 6 people who tuned in to watch. I care more about a broken table and the fact that I had all week, literally 7 days, to move that."
Well, I was weed whacking today. I mean, that counts, doesn't it? I do other
things. Look, no. Look, you call that whatever you want. You can whack your weeds all you want. We know what you were really saying about that. But we need to focus in. Brian, you must, if you want to convince people, you must do 2 things. Are you ready? Number 1, you must love your Jesus. And number 2, you must love Donald Trump.
Well, what happens if I don't believe in God? What happens there?
Well, I think it's clearly obvious that maybe God won't believe in you then. And the other thing would be that thou canst move us ahead successfully until thou hast time management skills.
Where's that in the Bible?
Or it is in Ezekiel.
1.1?
It is in Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 517. And that brings me into what I just want to say first. So thank you for that, providing that segue. Did you know, and I did not, and I was shocked. I think I'm a fairly astute and good understanding of the Bible. Part of that is I went for 17 years to the Methodist Church, and I went from kindergarten to grade 6 to Bridgeton Christian School. So, pretty well steeped in Bible history. And there was a verse from Ezekiel, which I just said, and it made the rounds. What, Ezekiel?
Cereal? Something like that?
No, I've never heard of that. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's helpful.
Anyway, where actually it says, if I remember correctly, just look at this week, where it was talking about a woman who really enjoyed sex. You don't think of that in the Bible. And the members, their members, he was talking about men, their members are that of a donkey. Now, did you know that they talked about big donkey dicks in the Bible? I didn't know that. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it's right there. It's Ezekiel 23 verses 16 to 19 or something like that. If somebody wants to look it up. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
Did it have the same smell?
No, listen, the Bible does not have a smell. God has no odor. And what started what started all that, Brian? That's serious. Everything I say is true.
I'll get serious now.
But no. I said everything I said was true about that. But what I find so interesting is it was in response to the superintendent of Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
Yes, who has demanded that in every class in public school in Oklahoma, the Bible is used. Every class. Now, just a question. Didn't the founding fathers set up something that I think was called separation of church and state? I believe I've heard something about that. Now, you say, okay, it is a big deal. And that kind of takes us all the way through this. We're at the halfway point of the first year of the Donald Trump fascist regime.
Right. And let's call that, for now on, we call it the fascist regime.
It is. It's a fascist regime.
We do not call it the Republican Party.
No. So, I would say that Donald Trump has done something that I would never, ever, ever have believed he nor anybody else in the White House could do. And that's to take us from, on the fascist meter, maybe we were a 6 out of 100. Maybe there were some fascist things in our government. And now we're over halfway there.
Agreed.
Over halfway there. And much of what we talk about tonight can be seen through the lens of history. Now, we could make an argument, or I could make an argument, or you could make an argument that, history's all around us. And Faulkner said it's not even it's the past never dies, it's not even the past, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you take this filter of what happened in Germany in the 1930s and overlay it with America right now, you will find, if you have any feelings of animosity toward what Hitler did, it's real close, man. It's really, really close.
And in these I'm not a historian, Dave, but I would like to know, perhaps you could share, if you do know, historically, when you get this pattern, does it usually always lead to a Germany type situation?
It leads to fascism. Now, what's interesting, I'm not.
I know that Mussolini technically was the first fascist,
but you could go back before that time. First, again, there's been fascist leadership before fascism became a term. Right. So what we mostly associate fascism with really is starting with the Spanish Civil War, which preceded the World War II. What I've found in what little limited time I have to research about that is, the playbook pretty much turns out that the things that fascist dictators do, for example, Hitler did it in German, but Trump is doing it in whatever he passes for what he calls English. But the things are the same. And anybody who's on Facebook where people who don't like Trump, including historians and anybody with any sense, you're seeing these things. Trump called them what? His word for moral degenerates. Hitler called them vermin. Yes. Now, Stuart, very good point, and I want to talk about that just for a moment. And Brian, I want you to. Okay. If you were on Facebook or any other social media, you saw something again, something new, something I've never seen before. You saw what Stuart has here. Many, many people talking about this is a different July 4th. I can't celebrate this July 4th. I look at the flag and I don't feel the same this July 4th. This is not the America that was July 4th last year. This was not the America of my childhood. This was not the America of my 20s. Not America from last year. Brian, put you on the spot for a minute, but I like to do that. Thinking about July 4th last year, roughly now, 367 days ago, but we'll say a year ago. A, are you surprised what happened? B, how does it make you feel? And C, does it get better or worse on its own?
Okay.
Take them in any order you want.
I've never, on any July 4th, I've never really enjoyed July 4th only because of the fireworks. I don't like fireworks. That's the first thing. But there was always a sense that, when I watched something on television, that the entire country was proud of, the birth of our nation and, how things turned out, the efforts that all our citizens put in to make this the country that it is or was. But when we got close to July 4th this year, first of all, last year, I never would have expected this because I didn't think Trump was going to win. Simply because I just figured there would be some common sense when we had the election. And boy, was I wrong. In fact, I was very wrong. You were wrong in 2016. I was wrong in 2024. But
correct.
This, Dave, and seriously speaking, this time, my heart was not in it at all. I just treated it like just any other day. I purposely did not watch anything. I could not watch it. How can somebody watch something like that in a time period as this is with, I don't even want to call him a leader, but a despot, a demagogue? I don't know how anybody could enjoy the holiday because you see that there's a complete turnaround in this country. We don't know where the future's going to land with this, but it doesn't look good. Dave, there was nothing behind it. I made that video earlier this week about collateral. There was no collateral behind the country right now. It's just it's literally, not literally, but figuratively, it's a country without collateral now.
Well, I too shared many of those thoughts. I didn't protest on July 4th. Hey, Lisa, that kind of surprises me. Again, let me do it this way. I don't want to give myself a grandeur that I don't deserve. But honestly, if I were to sit back and say, hey, Dave, were you built for this time? I would say yes. In terms of the careers that I held, in terms of the protests, in terms of my idea of a hero being Steve McQueen from The Great Escape. So on every level, I am. Now, having said that, the one thing that I don't know is, am I on the side of the victors or the losers? But at this point, I think that's immaterial. Mm-hmm. I think it's the fight itself. This is a cliche, but it's something that motivates me. I have 2 grandchildren. And most of what I do is through a filter of, will this make the world better for them or worse for them? Now, I assume it's cut off on mine a little bit, but I assume, Lisa, your thing saying, been wrong all along. You're not alone. Okay? You're not alone. It is unimaginable to everybody but George Orwell, who never wrote about America, by the way, who wrote about England. But it almost was the realm of science fiction that America would do this. And even beyond that, in 6 months. Now, let's just look at some of what's come recently. Brian, I'm going to leave it. I think the big thing is what you want to talk about, and that is the big, beautiful bill. But I'm going to go reverse. We'll go with the other, some of the other things he did. Now, of course, we know he mangles the language. Now, do you want a leader that mangles the language? It's not a cardinal sin, but it gets to the heart of what I believe the president, and hopefully, I'm saying he, hopefully someday she, gets to. They set the tone for the country. Now, Brian, assume for a moment, even if you don't, that you agree with me, that the president sets the tone for the country. You're a reporter now coming from Russia, since you are a Russian expert, spent time there, speak the language fluently, teach it. You're Russian coming. You've never been to America before, but you're a reporter, and you're going to try to describe the mood state of the country as set by the president. What words would you say? What is the American mood you would think that this president has set, or the tone, if you will?
Well, first of all, he's made this country hot in the sense that he's divided the country. You just look at the statements he said, I believe yesterday, about hating Democrats. Mm-hmm. He's created what is now a cold civil war. But there is this, I don't think our side would actually go into a hot civil war, not us, but I think they would, and that's what scares me. But when you say reporting, you're saying a Russian journalist, correct?
Well, yeah, I'm saying somebody who wasn't here, okay?
Right.
But who had a comparison of Russia was their base. See, you and I have discussed this numerously, where you do have enough information and
right.
to understand what Russia is and what Russia was and what Russia did and how Russia thinks.
Okay.
I do not. So I can only think as an American. But I'm interested, if you put your Russian hat on, if you will, and you come in. So what's a Russian say? Are they happy? Are they sad
I'm
for
glad
America?
I'm glad you did ask that, because I did have this very conversation on Saturday. And this Russian professor, she said to me that, oddly enough, we know that the news is propaganda there. Now, she doesn't consider it propaganda because she's pro-Putin, this particular person.
Right.
Wonderful, sweet person, but she is misguided, and she's a product of her environment. But she said that the majority of the news in Russia, which is on television, but most people watch, again, most people are pro-Putin there, they talk not about Putin, but about Trump. However, what they don't get about Trump is the situation going on as far as his bill, what it's taking away, the anger within the country. What they are saying is relates to Russia, and that
would be interesting.
And also with the Ukraine situation, and they put very, very high on the list the LGBTQ thing, which they are fiercely against, and they see this as the corruption of society. So that is a country which is traditionally, you'll see I've made some other posts, just they hide, the media there will hide everything. And to this day, even in Russian high schools, they choose to teach that the World War II, is the Great Patriotic War in Russia, started in 1941, which we know started in 1939. The Russians killed.
We're on the other side.
The Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. They murdered Polish officers. They still to this day don't know that. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. So when you ask me what would be the Russian mentality if a journalist was going to report about this, you would get lies as usual. And in a certain sense, they are the Trump counterparts in Russia. So you've got just basically if you want to have one fundamental idea, and that we've lost the truth in this country.
True.
And I think that's probably the best way to say it. Keep it really simple. We've lost truth in the United States. That's something that we respected, especially during Watergate. Even Republicans were not going to deal with the lies.
Right.
You can't have a liar. Now it seems to be a badge of honor to have a lying president. And as you said, I think what you're alluding to is when you have a leader who expresses himself or herself, like Linda McMahon or something like that, in that type of way, that does have an effect. Just as an effect, we have this unconscious effect where we do affect each other, and
Correct.
Especially when you're, again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but when you're 7 or 8 and you hear these things, when you have a president who says "what the fuck" or something like that. I mean, look, we all know how to curse. I could curse like a sailor if I wanted to, but I don't walk into my classroom and start saying every word in the book. But this guy does it. So he is influencing us just like a coach could influence it. Why is it? You've seen a pattern in sports where if you had the right manager to do things the right way, somehow it worked out. In the
Right.
same way, if you have the wrong person managing, we can go back. And I want people who don't know about the Phillies, but the Phillies had a manager named Danny Ozark. He had the best team in Major League Baseball in 1977. You could even argue in 76 and maybe in 78. And they blew it through poor decision making. So it does matter. And I don't even think we consciously know how it matters. You mean?
No, I think that's a key point, Brian. That it is. Well, I want to pick up on two things that you said. One, the most disturbing thing you said to me was what you were talking about when you were talking about history and how it's presented in Russia, that they don't even know.
Right.
Now, why is that? Why is that troubling to me? There is a war right now for Trump, the MAGA Republicans, and the MAGA rabble to take over the American education system. Do you realize in a couple states already, they must teach that January 6th was a patriotic act?
And I want to ask you on this line, while you've said this, Dave, I know
Right.
you use Copilot, right? I use Gemini. Other people use Grok.
I use ChatGPT more.
Okay, ChatGPT.
Yes,
But
Yeah.
the one nice thing, we had this discussion yesterday about saving time. The one nice thing about AI, and there are problems with it, but the nice thing is that you can get the facts very, very quickly, and in a summarized way that you really can't get by just using. It's like Super Google. I talked with Paul about this today. It's a Super Google.
right.
And
At this point, yes.
At this point, and it's kind of like a fact checker. It gives us like almost a godlike ability to check facts. Now, this is what worries me because you can't get Grok, you can't get Copilot, and you can't get Gemini in Russia. I mean, some say you can do it on the browser. We tried today, can't.
I would assume that's the
This is going to lead to the
case.
truth, Dave. If this is going to lead to the truth, I'm talking about AI, the good part of AI. What now? You talked about religion. What will happen to Grok? What will happen to?
Well, that's
Copilot?
that's the point. Look, you and I differ slightly on some things. We agree on much more than we differ on. And one of our differences is our approach necessary to religion and God and Christ and all of that. Mm-hmm. We both agree that the Bible is not the Word of God. We both agree that Christianity is not the one and be all religion. Where we differ is, you just say quite honestly, and that's a very logical position. I would call you an atheist. I wouldn't really call me an agnostic. I would call myself, I'm not sure and it doesn't matter to me. That's all. That's not something. When I was younger, I wanted to debate God. How many angels can you fit on the head of a pin? And, why is the Pope infallible? All that's
and why are there
meaningless
gates there to protect God if he's all powerful?
all that stuff, right?
Right.
You get balled up because that doesn't really affect how you act. Now, you've said, I think if anybody ever writes the bio of your life, they'll find out that you have no time management skills, i.e. tonight when you had to clean your room before the show goes on.
I don't.
And the other thing would be, though, you often say, and I think I'm capturing this right, if not a close paraphrase, I don't need some 1,000-year-old book to tell me how to be a good person.
Right.
And I think that is absolutely true. Again, if I were labeling myself, I'm probably more of a humanist than anything else in terms of how I view religion. But obviously, not all are that way. So let's take what happens. Let's put ourselves in the place of a Muslim child going to school, a little bit scared because we know how Muslim are treated in this country. And they go and they're confronted with the idea that the God of the country where they were born and the God of the country where they live now finds them to be abhorrent and out of place. Now, here's
an atheist kid too, a student too.
All of that. But here's the thing that that gets it gets even worse, because the MAGA, one of the things that the MAGA does is they always jump to the ultimate conclusion. A couple examples. I believe very firmly, and I actually have 8 that I can produce at any time. I believe very firmly that, not through me originally, but doing research and listening to others, I've come up with 8 gun regulations that are realistic and I believe would make America a safer place, and a safer America is a better America. As soon as I would say anything about that, you're coming to take our guns. No. Today, Brian, and I'm always, I was on my Facebook page, and I will talk about this in a moment, but something else I want to say later. But right now, I just want to say this. So one of the best voices against Trump in the city of Bridgeton, we'll just call her Nadine. And Nadine posted something that made you think about the connections between the horrendous prison we're building in Florida and the concentration extermination camps of Nazi Germany. There are comparisons. I just came. I mean, it's so frustrating when you really know. I just came from Auschwitz. I was at Auschwitz about a month ago. So I think I know better than somebody who hasn't been outside the state of West Virginia, right, about what for any number of reasons. I'm not saying I'm better than them or I know more, but in that I think I do. Well, and then one of Judy's roommate, who I have mentioned I think a couple times on the show, but her husband's father and mother were both in Auschwitz, were both scheduled to die, and Schindler pulled them out. They were on Schindler's list. Doesn't get any closer to death than that, except if you die, right? And so she pointed this out, and all of a sudden, a Trumper, stone cold maggot, comes on and says, "Drama queens." That's how they view somebody talking about the near death of their father-in-law and mother-in-law. Anthony, I got to come back to I should have looked it up. This is just in passing. New Mexico was one, and I think Tennessee was the other, and I'm not sure that Tennessee has passed it. But there were 2. I'll do the research and I'll get back to you, Anthony, on that. So anyway, what it's not Texas, because Anthony, I know you live in Texas. Texas had a lot of bad things wrong, and there's probably a bill out there somewhere that does do that. But the idea of this history, and whether we're talking about the role of religion in schools, what happened on January 6th, all this stuff, what they're doing at the Smithsonian, which in my estimation is criminal, what they're doing to national parks. Now, forget about what they're doing to the national parks. Do you know that they're under orders to take down anything that reflects poorly on the United States of America? And you know what and you said this about Russia and gays and that kind of thing. And remember, historically, a hell of a lot of gay men and women died in those concentration camps too, in Hitler's Germany. And one of the things they did at Stonewall, for anybody, just quick lesson, anybody knows what Stonewall was a bar in New York City, and it is like if you're going to put a place on where suddenly gays stood up, that's it. Okay, if you need to research it, it happened in 1969, and from that point on, there was I guess Brian, the way I say it is, that's a big pivot in history. There's before Stonewall and after Stonewall, right? They've now removed the plaques and any mention there, and it's a national park site. Oh, God. So you've got just what you said. You said your Russian professor. Obviously, she's got to be intelligent if she's a professor,
very
or at
least
be able to,
but she's unformed.
But there you are. So now, we could argue that already American students are uninformed. But now it gets worse. They're going to be misinformed.
Misinformed, right?
With misinformed with disinformation. Mm-hmm. That's where they're headed with this. And when I said, my grandchildren are 17 and 16, so they're out of that possibility.
Could you tell the story? Do you mind sharing that with your granddaughter?
What's that?
You told me a story, a small short story about.
Well, since Wow Dave, Wow Anthony, what are you talking about?
Your granddaughter, when she had heard Trump.
Oh, about fuck and Trump. Well, a couple things. I always hesitate because most all of us think our grandchildren are the end all and be all. But I do have a granddaughter who, objectively, by everybody, says, "Man, maybe she's not of this earth," because she just has all these multiple talents in multiple areas. Again, before we say, "Oh, that's great, Dave. That's great," she has complete paralysis from time to time because she's a perfectionist. And Brian, you and I were talking about writing. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, two things I want to say. Brian's just starting writing. He's always been verbal the other way. And he has hellacious raw talent as writing. And that's something I know. So get on Substack and read the stuff that he writes.
Thank you.
But anyway, Audrey, the thing that makes me most proud is she is a thinking radical. Now, again, as all young radicals have to do, I had to do it. You go through a period where you're so convinced you're right, everything, it's dogma, it's black and white. She hasn't gotten that graying yet, but it's refreshing to see that because you got to start from that point, right, or you never start at all. So she wanted to mess with her dad. No, she actually wanted to mess with her mom because her dad didn't care. And so she said, and then Michael got a hold of him and said, "Grandpa, got to have a talk with Audrey." And he was, we were laughing about it. But anyway, so what she did because she was aware of the danger of it. She articulated what you said about Trump saying fuck, and I'm talking about the tone of the country. So she said to her father, Trump said fuck, and he's the president of the United States. And you know what that means, Daddy? What? And this was a verbatim quote, "I can fucking say fuck whenever the fuck I want to because the fucking president said fuck, and that means it's fucking okay to say fuck." Now, that's satirical in a way, right? Sign of thinking. But what she knew, even though she's only 17, is, and maybe even heard, Brian, maybe even heard her classmates say, and you've heard it, we've all heard it, and this is another danger. The president did it, so it must be okay. That's another thing. Now, I can't think of anyone, and I would defer to you if you want to put Putin up there. I would defer to someone from North Korea if they want to put their leader up there. There's a few African nations, a couple in Central America. But I can't think of anyone in American history, up to and including Charles Manson, who is a worse role model with as much power as Donald Trump has. I can't conceive of one. I just can't.
Right.
What you said, Brian, not because you said it, not because I agree with you, but the thing that we've lost is truth in this country. And hear me carefully, people. You cannot have a democracy if you don't know what's true. And we are headed in that direction. We're being pushed, pulled. Stop. Now, you mentioned Grok and some of the others.
And they're
not
all
this
essentially
show.
the same. I'm not.
They are. I've been experimenting with AI, and I'm just going to say this. I find it fascinating, but like anything else, it's a tool that can be used for good, or it's a tool that can be used for evil. That's true of a gun. That's true of Bible. That's true of anything. Okay. So we'll have to come back to that. But one of the things that happens is Grok, who you mentioned, by the way, any science fiction fans out there know that Grok comes from Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein, one of the great science fiction classics of all time. And of course, Elon Musk, it's from Elon Musk's company X that Grok developed. And it's already been pointed out that it's not necessarily truth. It's truth as Elon Musk will okay it when it comes across his desk, if that makes, because, it's his thing. Now, if you want something scary about that and to show you how easy it will be to influence, I use ChatGPT. I'm not saying you have to use it. I'm not saying about it. It's what I use. And right now, at this point, and remember, it can change so quickly. Right now, most people use it. Most writers using AI say it's the best for writers. It's not very good for images. But anyway, what I was able to do, and I'm a nobody. I'm just starting out. I'm a neophyte. I fed it enough of my writing, right, input, that it can write in my style. And I'm a nobody. When I say I mean, I have one book out that sold 3 copies and Judy bought 2 of them or something like that. I mean, it's, I'm not Dave Barry. I'm not James Patterson. I'm not Stephen King. I'm not any of those people. But 2 things about that. Number one, it can write a humorous piece in the style of Dave Barry. It can write a scary story in the style of Stephen King. It can write a mystery thriller in the style of James Patterson. And you'd have to sit there and parse every page until you could find something that says it's not written by them. Okay, that's one thing, right? But it now is good enough to do that with Dave Price, just from what I fed it. So now, why is that scary? For a lot of different reasons. It's not the Terminator yet. But what it is scary is, so Donald Trump doesn't even know how to turn on a computer. I believe that to be true. I think he can use his phone to tweet. I don't even know if he can turn on a computer. But he does have people who will do his bidding. And what he could come to and say, look, take the Civil War and write it this way and put it in there. And then what happens, Brian, with AI? It has to debate in and of itself is Trump's, and they don't know it's Trump's version, right? They would just know that this is a historical version made by Dr. Philibrand Brandius, the #1 brain, make us shit up. And that's good. That's the part that's really bad. Now, one last thing on education and Trump this week, which I found heinous. Not the biggest thing he did, not the worst thing he did. Did you follow the story at all about when he said Shylock?
I just heard that he said it, and he said he didn't.
All right, quick. Not, just because I'm an English major, anybody want to debate physics with me? You got me. I can't even spell physics, but I've spent a lot of time reading and writing over the years, and I was an English teacher, and I was a college professor of communication. So anyway, what happens is Shylock is in a Shakespeare play. Shakespeare coined a lot of words, including names, and Shylock was a very conniving Jewish merchant in that play. And Shylock has become part of the vernacular. It's one of those words, we borrowed hundreds of them from Shakespeare, that's been pulled in the language. Now, it's not something you hear every day necessarily.
But when you hear it, you know what they mean, right?
Usually. So Trump says this, and he comes out afterwards, gets, I didn't know that.
I'm surprised he even knew the name,
He heard it somewhere. Remember, his sense of history and knowledge's deepness is, I heard it somewhere, or even more, I saw it on TV. Right. And even more, I saw it on Fox TV, or OAN, or Newsmax, or I read it in Breitbart, whatever. So he comes out and he says this, and of course and then he says, "Oh no, I didn't know that. I just meant I just knew it was a term that was used for a bad businessman." And I would have said at that point, if I were a reporter, I would have said, "No, sir, the term for a bad businessman is Donald Trump. You." Of course, I get ejected from the press conference, but whatever. So what that says, though, it says 2 things: one on the surface, and the other unsaid but said. And that is this: either Donald Trump is too uneducated to be president of the United States, or 2, once again, he's demonstrating that he will never speak the truth. It will only be a lie. And again, back to this tenor and tone, that's a tone that is set. Now, it's funny how the things we do on the show just at random sometimes flow together and do things. So just very quickly, for all those out there who do follow my Facebook page, and I think we have 1,500 subscribers to Divided We Stand, and I have 4. So I assume, on my personal page, I have 3 or 4 now. But anyway, I go back and forth, and Brian, I don't know if you have this or not, struggle or not, but I've had it for since Trump came down, as I mentioned today on a post. Since Trump came down that golden escalator and did what I never thought he could do, become president of the United States, I've been torn between the idea of making my Facebook personal page about what I eat, my family, and the nice pictures. That's one side of Facebook. And then the other side is, do you talk about your job? And mostly you do. That's okay. But when it gets to politics, like religion, right? There's a lot of people that are offended by it. They don't want you to do it. I know of people that have said they didn't. And I go back and forth on that. I've gone back and forth on that.
That's understandable.
But what I have, yes, Gary, that's something. Gary put something up there. I just want to call attention to that for a minute. That actually, according to many, what would we call them, experts of the mind, people who really understand, say that is a sign of the truly liberated, educated person. If you can hold in your brain two things can be true at once, contradictory though they are. That takes something, because MAGA doesn't have that. Okay, they don't. It's one thing, and unfortunately, the one thing is what Trump says. But anyway, let me get back to this idea I was talking about before. So we have this president now setting the tone. Now, there's nothing wrong with saying the word "fuck." I used to use it in class, actually. Yes, that's a very interesting book. I did some research very quickly. It's taking me away, but I'm putting together a project down here called DC Reading. And so I'm researching and putting together like different lists. And I have, again, with the help of AI, there's James Patterson's The President is Missing is one of more than 100 books writing fictionally about the president. But anyway, that's another thing. You could read The President is Missing, and that's also co-written by Bill Clinton, by the way. He's written 2 books, and then a third is coming out with Clinton. And Patterson has written 1 book with Hillary. Anyway, and 1 with Dolly Parton. But the idea of it is, certainly Bill Clinton knows what it's like to be president, right? Bill Clinton knows what it's like to be. So think about that. It would be like coming to you. I'm a writer. I come to you and say, hey, Brian, I'm going to write something about an American teacher who was a business teacher, but got all this Russian and now is teaching Russian in an inner city high school. That's really cool. Well, you would give me that stuff, right? So I don't know what that is. I taught longer, than you did, but it doesn't mean that I would know that stuff. So anyway, back to this. By the way, James Patterson does not speak kindly of Donald Trump, and as any learned person should. But we're back there. So we've got a president who says fuck, and there's nothing wrong with saying fuck. Like I said, I actually said it in class. And what I would do, I wanted to emphasize something that I felt more strongly about than sexual perversion. And that is what I call human perversion. And what I mean by that is using pejorative names for groups of people and lumping them all on. And of course, as Brian knows well, Bridgeton High School was once a predominantly white high school, became a really predominantly black high school that now is a predominantly Latino, Hispanic, Chicano high school. So this was a year where they were black. And I find one of the most offensive, if not the most offensive word in that collective, you've got spick, mick, all, WAP. I think the N-word. And I did that deliberately. I do not speak that word. I do not want to speak that word. It to me is just a word that should not exist. And we could debate later whether black people should use it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about me. And so what I would do to my kids to try to make a point, I would just say, you know what? We're talking about language and bad language. I said, I'll say fuck all day long. And they'd all go, but I said, I will not say the N-word. Now, but I would not say fuck. Like the fucking principal got the fucked up, or
Right.
Sit down your fucking seat, Jerry. The point of language is to know what to say, but more importantly is when to say it. And Trump does not have that governor on his head. Then we come to the ignorance of Donald Trump is astounding. It is astounding. Now I'm going to separate, for this purpose, I'm going to separate stupidity and ignorance. Ignorance is this to me. Ignorance it's a two-part process if you really are ignorant. First of all, Ignorance means you're not aware of it. Okay, that's part of it. But the other side of that is that you don't want to become aware of that. Trump doesn't want to learn. He doesn't listen. There's nothing there. Now we've kind of gone around, but we haven't talked about the big thing. And what's the big thing? It's even got a name: the big, beautiful bill. Brian, is it big? Is it beautiful? And interesting enough, it's no longer a bill. Why? Anybody who's grew up listening to Schoolhouse Rock knows that it's not a bill. Not a bill. It's a law. Now, one thing about law. The law is what you're supposed to follow. Now, we know that Trump does not follow the law. We know that his followers will bend the law in such a way as to make him the good guy. We know all that. But you and I and Americans who, we basically followed most of the laws. Now, I'm sure most people out there have gone in excess of the speed limit. So you say, well, everybody breaks the law. No, not everybody breaks the law. So let's get back to this big, beautiful bill that's not a bill, this big, beautiful law. Your take on it. Go, Brian.
About the bill?
Mm-hmm. Law now. Remember.
Right, okay,
law.
It's a law.
No, let me do that just I wasn't making you. What happens, that's something else we've lost. Words are important. A bill is, not you, because it's drilled into our heads. It's no longer a big, beautiful bill. It's a big, beautiful law. So now you have to discuss it as not just a hypothetical law of the land. It is now the law. It's not a bill anymore. Go.
You're probably not going to like this answer, Dave.
That's not about. I don't like.
I'll let you decide. But
go ahead.
I mean, I actually used AI to look at the various parts of the bill and the effects of Medicaid and the environment. But what really bothers me, and I think it was kind of an unconscious thing, because it finally kind of dawned on me. I wasn't in my conscious. I was thinking about like the parts of it, and then I just stopped for a while, and I just had this anger about the bill in general and how it went through. And from my point of view, my perspective is that I don't like how it went through, because to me it means it was something that just to me showed that they have complete control now. So yeah, we can say it's a shitty law. We know that, at least to me. But the reality of the situation is, I feel like the Democratic Party is powerless, and you've stated as much in the past.
I agree.
The fact that it is.
I agree.
It's it's a party which is so diversified that it can't have a clear message. Where the Republicans, albeit a fucked up message, it is quite clear that a 5-year-old could understand. And the fact that they were able to push this through, it was when it was 50-50, and then he's got the courts willing to help him out. We saw what happened this week with the Supreme Court. It's so depressing to me. That law now, to me, represents the idea that they can do anything they want, and there's nothing we can do. I honestly don't even care what's in the bill. I know that it will affect me in a certain way. I know it will certainly affect people who make less than I do, and I know it certainly will be just a windfall for the people above us. But in general, what bothers me is there's this momentum that he has. It started with the election, and who knows where it's going to end. That's what bothers me about it. There's no avenue to get out of.
Now, Brian, I want to ask you about, why did you think I wouldn't like that?
Because it wouldn't specifically answer the question about. Well,
it did answer the question.
Medicaid?
It did answer. You gave the answer indirectly, but it is the scariest thing about the bill. One, you said, I don't really care what's in it. And that's true. Okay. Now, what it shows is, in the discussions and leading up to that, legislators signed on to the bill without reading it, without knowing. We're seeing that now. So that's number one. The ignorance again, the ignorance of the president of the United States, the ignorance of congressmen, the impotence of the Democratic Party, even though their hands are tied. If your hands are tied, you got your feet to kick,
got your feet.
right? And we don't see, I don't see much of that coming out there. And you also identified why that's the problem. The beauty of the Democratic Party, if there is beauty, is the huge umbrella that embraces all this stuff.
Exactly.
The fact is, you can't say this because it offends that. You can't do this because it offends that. Also, my feeling is right now, more than since the 60s when I was out on the street, is in tribute to our good friend Antonio, maybe it is time to burn it down. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. But you said, which is so true. But
Which,
you
by the
said
way,
something else.
We did not agree with that when he was on the show.
Well, well, I'm saying I'm going more to that,
Okay.
and I'm going more to it. But anyway, the thing is too, and everybody just stop for a minute. We talk a lot. I talk too much sometimes, and I'm going to listen to what I'm saying now, just because I'm going to pretend that I'm listening, not speaking. If that bill and all the hubbub around it, such as I know this is bad, but I'm going to vote for it anyway, such as if I don't vote for it, MAGA will kill me, all those kinds of things that would said around the bill. What would stop Trump from proposing any single thing, no matter how heinous, no matter how horrible, no matter who it hurts, no matter what transpires beyond it? This bill, to me, taken to its illogical extreme, I say illogical extreme, says that he could do what his advisor and perhaps fuck buddy, Laura Loomer, except I don't think Trump can get it up. So I think that's not what's going on. Laura Loomer, who has no business being on the planet as far as I'm concerned. And I don't attack people for their looks, but if I did, she'd be prime. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know who Laura Loomer is, look her up and see a before and after picture. She is now the queen representative of Mar-a-Lago look. Laura Loomer, are you ready for this, Brian? I don't know if you caught it. And I'm a Laura Loomer, what should I say? Trying to be a Laura Loomer aficionado, just so I can understand how stupid. She said, what a great bill. This paves the way for 85 million people to be put in their place. Do you know what
that expression bothers me.
Well, think about this. And she used some stronger words too. But do you know how many, according to the census, do you know how many Hispanic, Latino, Chicano immigrants are in the country, legally or not? Do you know? I didn't until this came up. 25 million. Remember what number? And do you remember what number I just said she used? Do you remember that?
That's us.
Close, 85 million. 85. But you were close.
Right.
That means you were listening. That number is what's used for total all the Latino, Hispanic, Chicano immigrants, legally or not legally in the country. So what's to stop Donald Trump from saying, listen, man, it's just too damn hard. You know, they're innocent, they're guilty. Let's just wrap up and get all the Latinos and we'll get them all out of here. And look, I know what did I say? We'll send them to the Sudan. Where they're sent. They sent 6 people. Bizarre. 6 people. Now we know that, here's another thing. We know this week 2 people died in custody of ICE. We know that. You say, well, that's not bad. You know, 1 is too many. 2 is deserving of Donald Trump going to hell, if there is a hell. There isn't one, I don't think. Finally, on that.
But can I interrupt?
So,
Paul mentioned, I had a good conversation with Paul, and I was wondering if you would agree that do you feel that ICE will become the SS of this country? Oh,
it's not that will become. It is. It is. Okay, let's look at that. And Brian, if you let me, I'm just going to run a few minutes over.
That's okay.
Just
fine.
Yeah. Okay. So, because you said it's summer, you can go to bed at 3 a.m. So, what? That's a great point, though. What you and Paul were talking about. So, why do I say what I say? All right. And if anybody just wants to play with AI, this would be a fun experiment. It would say, list the 10 most heinous things that you believe the SS did in Nazi Germany. And it'll come up with it. You might not agree with all, but it's there. And then say, please compare this list to what ICE is doing now. And with the exception of actually killing people themselves, the parallels are there. So ICE is already there, with the difference being nobody could be killed. But with Laura Loomer having the ear and maybe the penis, but I don't think so, because I don't think Trump can get it up, but at least has the ear of the president. And they've actually, they always hate that day. No, but insiders have said that on 3 or 4 occasions, she had the last word and got what she wanted over anybody other advisor. Anyway, but she said, she used that number. She didn't pick that number at random. She is calling for the incarceration, the deportation, and the death of every single Spanish speaking citizen in America. In other words,
does it stop there?
No. Well, that's the great thing, and it's sometimes one of the things that it's not I don't like. I kind of feel, how we get some of these things and they're just said so often that they become cliche, and once they become cliche, we dismiss them, right? That's just cliche. The great saying, not great because it's great from a bad thing, but it's there. They came for the Jews, and I didn't say anything. And it's actually, it's up. It's a centerpiece of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And this idea, no, it doesn't stop there. Everybody disagree with me, it's fine. I do not care. But just again, we're going to do this one of these things. If we now know 2 things, Trump can get just about anything through, right? With what he has.
He has shown that clearly. He can get anything through.
Number 2, my subject next week, hint, hint, will be America is dying because of its loss of empathy. But that's for next week's show. But we'll just touch it here. We know that Trump has no redeeming human characteristics. Right. The only thing you can say negatively positive about Donald Trump is he is turning out to be the consummate and the greatest con man who ever took a breath in America. Okay?
Yeah, but he's operating out of the id, and that's
I understand that. I understand that.
A real problem.
And so now, what's to stop? You say, will it go on? What's to stop him if, and I'm making this, but Peter Thiel, that's another subject for another day. Elon Musk, another subject for another day. Although, just a quick side, I love it when Musk and Trump fight. That's good for us. You don't have to pick a side, because neither side, it's like the 2 worst people on the planet. You could do it well, but you don't even know when that's going to be, Ben. Now, here's what, let's suppose that there's a billionaire out there, a growing billionaire who has one passion in life. He just can't stand that once he was in a bar and a gay man came up and propositioned him. And that turned him to thinking, and he's decided America would be much better if we had no gays, no lesbians, no trans people, etc. He gets Trump's ear. We know now, there's no mystery about this. Money is exchanging hands daily for favors in the White House, if not in the Oval Office, in the office next door. Who could say, no, that won't happen? Trump would, we don't know what he would never do. So, yeah, that's true. I do get that. No, that's fine. The problem becomes, in a WWE fight that is scripted, only probably if it's a one-on-one, only the 2 wrestlers could get hurt. And they do wrestle. That's it. But here's the thing in this one. I'm going to use that analogy. It's like a WWE match. And that's who was it put that up there? Because that's very astute. I agree with that 100%.
VD.
Yeah, okay. Well, VD does hurt, first of all. That's pretty true. But what again, I'm doing this analogy on the fly, so if it doesn't work, please bear with me. This is like the Musk Trump WrestleMania 62, whatever, WrestleMania 62 match between the two of them. Either one of them could get hurt in the ring, but I guarantee you that the 50,000 or the 18,000 who showed up, a lot of them are going to get hurt too as the audience. See, a WWE match only hurts the people that are involved in it. This match hurts everywhere. And again, what I would say, not justify my position, but just say, if I needed a fallback position on it, I come back and the more I live, the more I think this is true. The enemy of my enemy is not my friend, but he is my frenemy. In other words, at that point, so I hope, Vincent David, so I face myself for fun, I can handle it. Well, first of all, Vincent, which is Vincent Price, and then David Price, you were named after two of the greats in world history. And secondly, let me see, what was it about? Oh, I would have said, if I were a teacher, I can guarantee the lowest grade you would have gotten in my class. I gave everybody named a D, at least a B. They didn't have to do any work. So if I'd had you as a student, you'd have been home free. How do we want to wrap this up? I think I'm going to I let you go first, but I'm going to take it first tonight on the wrap up. What this week told me, two things, both of which are alarming. There is no bottom to how low Donald Trump could go. And at this point, the ways to stop him are few, if at all. We've not, the last bastion of hope out there at the government level is the military. We haven't seen how they will react yet. We know that Trump is replacing generals. We know that he is appealing to the baser interests of the military. We know that you could not find a worse person to run the Pentagon than the person he selected. We know all that. So you say, I'm going to give up. No. There is also something good, Brian, about the big, beautiful bill. The only way any people who now support Trump or any of the people who did not vote at all, and remember, everybody, I just hammer this home, but it's so important. It's not half the country. It's not. It's a third, a third, and a third. A third, I don't want to use a sexual thing. I started to say a third are virgins. A third are political virgins. For whatever reason, they didn't get involved. They could become our people. They could become his people. I look at it, he's not making friends. So I think if they become anybody's people, they're going to become ours. Also, this big, beautiful bill is designed that the most harm will be felt in red states. Okay? He can lie to them all day, and he can try to say, and he will, and
Well, today though, when Abbott asked him for aid, he just automatically gave to him. I think in that sense, he still is very savvy, and he's going to give the red states at our expense.
Yes. But let's assume for a moment, let's see if I'm not being predicting here, but I want to say this. Yeah, and that's true, Veg. I would take issue with no one cares or terrified to speak out. I would say that the powers that actually would have control over that are that way. The people of America are speaking out. They are. And this is what I'm saying. If you get the majority, public sentiment still can do a lot of things. And if these people get hurt, and they're going to, what do they do? And I would say that the big, beautiful bill assures that some people, I don't know the percentage, I don't know the number, of people who today are supporting Donald Trump a year from now will not. Last caveat on that, though. I did not know this, and I thought I knew a lot about the bill. Okay. Again, I'm using you as an everyman, Brian. What year is the midterm elections?
That'd be what, 26? The end of 26?
Correct. 2026. Do you know when many of the provisions of this bill go into effect?
I just looked that up. Some of them are later in 26, and some are early. Some are going in now, but some are stalled.
But you know what? You know what some of the major ones when they go in? 2027.
Right.
So the election will be held prior to that. So here's the scenario Stephen Miller's working on. Stephen Miller, who I consider to be, wow, whatever. But he is one of the brains of the operation. So he and Steve Bannon maybe palled around about it. But anyway, what happens politically, it's a brilliant move. Okay, so here's what happens. Some of the most heinous acts that will be deadly to people do not go in until 2027. It looks at this point that the Democrats will take, and I believe this to be true, barring anything unforeseen, the Democrats will take back the House. I don't think they can take the Senate, but they may, depending on the outcry of what Trump does between now and the elections, the midterm elections. But let's say that happens. The Democrats go in. These most odious parts of these bills take place in 2027. And who do the Republicans blame? The Democrats. People don't understand the law. Anyway, so what I want you to do, people, is you have two calls. Continue the fight. Fight hard. Fight with all you got. Fight. Then fight, and fight some more. And not everybody can do the same thing. And we don't have to. I use my time doing shows and other things like this, and participating both as a reporter and a protester in podcasts. I do not, because you don't have time to do everything, I do not write letters to congressmen, although it's very effective. So if you don't want to go out in public, you can do that. Somebody has to make the signs. Somebody has to make the phone calls. There's so much you can do. Some people want to contribute money. Money talks. We've got all that. So that's what. And the second thing is, please send cards, letters, emails, Instagram to Brian and say, Brian, listen, I know your time management skills are weak, but please, for the love of God, put the show on time and forget your dirty room.
Well,
so
they're
the two big.
What UPS does and give a 2-hour window.
VD, you're absolutely right. But let's look at that. I feel terrible about the people that will suffer. People will die in a weak economy. But if that gets the Dems to get the power to get rid of Donald Trump. Thanks, Gary. Anyway, so Brian, if you want your closing remarks, if I were you, I would defend. If I were you, I would defend your decision to clean your room and not start the show. But that's just what I would do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I said last week we got more of a philosophical and psychological situation. I'll say again. I'll speak. About myself. I just, in these difficult times, I want to make myself a better me. I want to understand, my issues, my shadows, and all the things that can make me a better person. I think that's the only thing I can change right now is myself. And if that is all I can do, that's, but as a whole, if we can do that, maybe we'll all rise to the top and we'll get something done.
And if I were your therapist, I would say 2 words to you.
Eat donuts.
Time management.
Okay.
Manage
last
time
week
better.
It was eat donuts. Now it's time management. You're telling me after the fact.
It varies.
All right.
By the way, if you keep losing weight and you turn sideways in your chair, we're not gonna be able to see you.
Right. Well, I think I'll go down another 20 at tops, and then I'll try to just maintain.
Brian, we joke about no. There's no way. You should not. I'm being serious. Unless you feel good about it. I mean, I see you're
perfectly done. You know what I mean? Look, I could stop now, but it just, if I were 18, if I were 22, I'd say, no, this part is not quite what I want. And it's harder now at 65 to do that. I'll do it. I will do it. And it hurts to work out very hard. And it's a pain. When I walk from anywhere from 7 to 12 miles a day. That's not really fun. It is for a couple of miles. It's never fun, but it's like Jack LaLanne said. You just have to do it because.
Well, but you don't. You have a choice. You can lose more weight or eat more donuts. I leave the choice up to you, but I know what I think.
Remember, and maybe we should end on this. Remember what Jack LaLanne said: "If it tastes good, spit it out." And that's, I guess, how we'll end it. How tall? I am 5'11" and a half. Unless I've lost a half an inch. over the last couple of years being elderly. You forget I'm an old man now. I'm a senior citizen, so I probably have lost it. Maybe I'm probably 5'11" now. So I was never 6 foot. So, you know. So anyway, I'll get there. I've got a long way to go. But I've only done this for 4 months, so that's pretty good. And before I lost a lot of weight, but I didn't go all the way. Now I'm just going to finish it off and hopefully. But I'm telling you, anybody, one of the best things I think intermittent fasting is a really good thing for people. I think that's, and if you can handle it, close that window of the hours that you were actually eating. If you can do, like maybe 6 hours period, like maybe you eat at 10 and you finish at 4. After that, give yourself some time. I think it can.
Well, okay. So what you're saying, if I hear you correctly, and this is the help part, is this: you're saying that a 2-word phrase, intermittent fasting, is better than a 3-word phrase, eat more donuts, when it comes to weight loss?
Well, I don't do
Are
one
you
meal
sure
a
about
day.
that?
I know I don't do that, But I think I think there are enough studies out there that show if you go into calorie deficit and you go into what's called autophagy, which is basically you're eating away your visceral fats. It's probably really good for you to do that from time to time. I would not go on a 3-day fast or anything like that, but there are health benefits for the brain.
Well, a question that I have,
a lot of
and
studies
course
coming out now about fasting.
inquiring minds want to know, what is the effect you feel this thing that you're doing has on your brain?
That's a great question because, your body is either going to be using the sugars or they're going to use the fats to burn. And, when you have a shit diet and you're eating a lot of donuts, as you suggested, your brain is working on the carbohydrates, and you'd rather it be, because your brain has to get energy. Your brain is made of fat. So you want to burn the fat and use that for the brain. It helps you think more clearly. I think I am thinking more clearly. I just think in general, if you want the fountain of youth, you're going to have to move your body continually, and I mean continually. And it's hard on the body, but in the end, it's good.
I just got a side comment, so I'm not asking this. It's a side comment that came to my phone. I have heard. Let me get it here. Hold on. I have heard that as a man loses weight, it makes his Johnson appear bigger. Is that what you're finding? And is that the reason you're dieting?
I don't think about such things. I tell you this though. As I said, you got to keep moving. I think it's like it's the old saying: if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And I mean, you got to use everything, okay, as much as you can. And I'll leave it at that. Now let's leave this till next week because I know you have to be another 2 hours.
No, I'm getting
here.
Okay. No. I got phone calls coming in about you. I'll reserve them for next week. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Folks. Bye. Thanks, Dave.